This is Vibe Science, a top 100 wellness podcast presented by the Radcast Network, breaking wellness barriers and making health truly personal. Here are your hosts, Ryan Alford and Chris Hansen.
Hello, and welcome to Vibe Science. We're always taking you to your highest vibes. At least that's our intent. Chris and I are here to empower your journey, to give you information and knowledge, but ultimately it's about you, taking you to your highest vibe. Hey, we're pumped. We've got Sam Gibbs Morris here. What's up, Sam?
What's up, guys? Good to be here.
Leadership coach, spiritual teacher, and, tripping buddy of Chris. Just kidding. We got to at least have fun with it a little bit. It's so much deeper than that. I know you guys had a real big journey together. We'll talk about that, but appreciate you coming on the show, Sam. Where's home today?
Home is in Austin, Texas today.
Sweet. Oh, he's a cool guy. He's in Austin, like I don't know why. I guess still, I know it's not new anymore. Austin's been a thing for like 15 years, probably plus. But it's still like when everyone says, "Oh, I'm in Austin," I do just kind of go, "Oh, it must be pretty cool."
There's definitely a vibe to it for sure.
Yeah. Is it still got, is it gets weird in Austin? Is it something like that?
Yeah. Keep Austin weird. Yeah.
Keep Austin weird. Is it still weird or is it just?
Oh, it's weird as fuck, dude. If you want weirdness, you come here, you'll find it.
Oh, me. Is it weird in a good way or bad way? I've heard it's kind of like,
it's weird. I attribute Willie Nelson to a lot of this, like Willie Nelson, Matthew McConaughey. Like they create this vibe of like, just be your radical fucking self and show up as you are, and people will love you and accept you. And that's kind of the vibe here. Like people are just so fully expressed. It's crazy.
That's good. As long as it's positive and
it's positive for sure.
That's good. Sweet. Well, I know you and Chris go way back. Chris, I mean, talk about you and Sam's relationship. How y'all got to know each other?
Yeah, man. Sam, glad you came on, brother.
Yeah, man. Great to be here.
Yeah, for anyone listening, I met Sam, 2022, I believe, down in Costa Rica, doing a plant medicine ceremony, the ayahuasca, and then bufo, the toad venom.
Yep.
So, and I had no psychedelic experiences ever. And
diving in the deep end.
I walk off.
Do you know how to swim? No, but I'm going in the fucking deep end.
I hop off like a 6-seater propeller plane, and 20 minutes later, I'm sitting with Sam in a ceremony about to smoke toad venom, but it was a beautiful experience. And Sam is a true professional and gifted, practitioner of this medicine. So it was,
thank you,
an amazing initial experience for me. I didn't realize until after that it's the most powerful psychedelic you can do. So
whoops.
I'm like, which it's all right. So it was, like I said, amazing. So that was how we connected. And then we continued to do, ayahuasca ceremonies throughout that week together for the week. And obviously you share really great experiences and great bonds. So Sam and I definitely bonded and I admire and respect him very much. So appreciate you coming on, bro. I'm just stoked to have you spread your message to the world.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. Great to see you again.
Yeah. Let's set the table for everyone, Sam. I mean, talk about, what led you down this path of, leadership and sort of spiritual training.
Yeah. A lot of falling on my face, a lot of just stumbling through the world for 20 years through, the big thing for me, from maybe 18 to 38 was alcohol and drugs. It started off as that, it's a lot of fun, a couple bad nights, then it gets about 50-50. And then at the end it was, arrested 25 times, suicide attempt, 7 trips to rehab. And finally it was just like, this can't go on. And so, 2012, I just put all that down and picked up some personal development stuff and started AA. And then about 6 years later, got into the plant medicine path. And it's been this, the best experience or education is felt experience, doing it. Like I had to figure out, it started very young with me where I had asthma. And so I essentially had to learn how to breathe in a correct way and learn how to navigate the world very carefully. And then coming out of addiction, it's kind of like you got to learn how to date again. You got to learn how to live again. You got to learn how to do all these things again. And so I've had this, until that point, I had this constant experience of learning how to do these things without, these crutches. And so, leadership, relationships, psychedelics have all been important things for me in my development. And then, I noticed too that like it's what men struggle with. Men have so much been just kind of cut off at the knees in a way. It's this pendulum swing of like the patriarchy, right? Of like this domination and just really terrible behavior, if we're being honest. And then a lot of it was that men, like then men come back in, they're like, I don't really know how to be, like, I don't know how to lead. I don't know if my leadership's going to be taken as aggressive or toxic. And so, I went through that. Like, I was like, I was that toxic guy, like in relationship, in the workplace, like whatever it was a lot of really reckless behavior. And so me trying to get back to center was an education that now, I noticed that a lot of other men, it doesn't always look like addiction, doesn't always look like one way, but at the root level, there's a lot of things that men struggle with that I like to help them through, that I had to walk through myself.
Yeah. There's no better experience than personal experience, both for the good and the bad, it seems, like it's the best coaches typically are the ones that have been in, some people get trained like you can, I'm sure there's wonderful coaches, but I always find the best ones I've been like, I can look them in the eye and I know they've been through this mud, as deep as I'm in,
Yeah. That's a big deal. And that's what I look for it as well. I was like, I need to know that exactly how I felt in that moment.
What were the triggers for you, Sam? You've been through, the road of addictions and like, is it, and, Chris has been transparent about this with his journey. Like, hitting just rock bottom, and it's like, you eventually have to, it's all up to you. You got to fucking flip the switch somehow, some way.
Yep.
What was that switch for you?
That switch, the switch flipped. I was sitting at my kitchen table in Charlotte, North Carolina, and right in front of me was a big pile of cocaine and a bottle of rum. And like, all of a sudden it was like the past 18 years of my life were just like right in front of me, of like broken relationships, failed careers, like my dad's face crying, my mom pleading to me to please stop. And it was just this moment where I said, oh, fuck, like I can't do this anymore. I can't do this to myself. I can't do this to the people in my life. It just has to end. And I, all the things that were like, I knew the reasons why I drank. I was, socially awkward. I had carried a lot of shame. I didn't know how to like interact with women without it. And I just said in that moment, it was, no matter what it is that I'm faced with going forward, all I know is that this cannot continue. Mm. And it was just, honestly, it was just a lot of pain.
It's funny, all the substances are sort of kill the pain until they are the pain.
Yeah. Very well said. Yeah.
And it's, I'm not immune to that myself. And so it's like, it's really, I don't know, transformative. And it's the ones that of us that, don't go too far that we kill ourselves or whatever it is, like, because you read about it every day, overdoses and all this. And you're like, you don't quite, sometimes it's obvious and sometimes you don't quite connect the dots, but then, or suicide, right? It's usually, if the drugs don't kill you, your mind does.
Yeah.
And
the silent sufferers are the ones that usually end up dying. For me, it was like, it was like an overt experience of addiction. Like I was, I had a suicide attempt where I jumped off a balcony in 2009. I was arrested 20 times, trips to rehab. Like, it was not a secret that I was struggling. My sister, on the other hand, it was a big secret. And she ended up passing away in 2018 because she just never let anybody in, and just was like, kind of like at that, like homeostasis level, I guess you could say, with it, where it was like, she has a problem, but it doesn't really show up and she hides it really well. And that was it was what brought her to the end.
Mm. What did she pass of? How did
she
pass?
Alcohol. It was gastrointestinal hemorrhage from alcoholism, liver cirrhosis.
Damn.
Yeah.
I hate that, brother.
Yeah. It's tough.
How many brothers and sisters do you have? Like, how big is your family?
So I had two sisters. That was my older sister, and I have a younger sister who's lives in San Francisco.
Mm. It makes you wonder, I've talked with you about this, and I think one of our early guests even talked about alcoholism, being or addiction and alcoholism. Something specific with alcohol. You remember this, Chris? I forget the doctor's name. He was saying it's like there is some genetics to it. It seems like it might be running your genetics. Maybe I'm just saying if you and your sister suffered with similar problems.
Yeah. I mean, there's, genetics are funny. I believe more in the epigenetics than the genetics.
Right.
Like, so these things get passed down. They do become like a fabric of the existence of it's like diabetes or being overweight or mental illness, like, oh, all the men suffer from it. So I must have it. And so a lot of the way that we use these stories and the way that we speak about these things, that's why cycle breakers are so powerful, is because they're like, no, I know that's a story and I know that I have the power to change that. And so honestly, like there was not a lot of addiction in my family before my sister and I. It was, we were kind of the only two that it really got. Damn. And so, I think my dad's dad, I think he was a heavy drinker, but it wasn't full on like alcoholic or anything. And so, that being said, like there are many families where it is just, that's it. Like they're just predisposed to it.
And certain, I think, ethnicities as well.
Yeah.
I know from my laboratory, the toxicology testing, I've seen certain, like the Native American population, this is no secret, that typically, they have alcoholism and it's because their body metabolizes alcohol differently.
Yep.
And I'm with Sam. I have no addiction history in my family. We think maybe a great grandfather had a drinking problem. And even at that biohacking conference I was at this weekend here in Miami, a woman was talking about the epigenetics and, that trauma you can get as a child or in the womb and stuff like that, where, okay, almost as a nature versus nurture. If my dad's an alcoholic and I'm watching him and that's how he functions and that's how I don't know.
I don't think it's one size fits all. It just made me think back since you mentioned your sister. Do you remember the doctor I'm talking about, Chris, that who said that was like the one thing? He wasn't saying that addiction as a whole is more that the alcohol or something had the genetic predispositions.
He's in Texas. He had the treatment center. He's British or something, if I remember.
Yeah. We'll put in the show notes his name specifically. But Sam, before we transition to what you're doing with men, just to kind of close some of your background, like what was the most powerful thing as you were going through this switch from, the challenges you were having to now, becoming this best version of yourself? Mm-hmm. What was like the most powerful part of that? Or like, I know it's always a lot of, I'm sure it wasn't one thing. Oh, you did one thing and you were cured or better or whatever. But like, what was that? What are or several of the biggest things that had impact on you?
Yeah. Two things came to mind. The first one is that when I got into the recovery scene, so to speak, and I'm sitting around in these rooms of people that are telling stories about the genetics of it, essentially about like, childhood, like their dad was abusive or they couldn't count on their mom because she was an alcoholic, always drinking wine. And I'm, like sexual abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse. And I'm sitting there like, I got none of that. Like, what's going on? Like, I just don't understand. How am I here? Like, what's going on? So in that moment, like I had to if I was going to figure this thing out, I had to look beyond like what I saw as like reasons, quote unquote, reasons to be here. And it got me into looking at like what was actually my experience in childhood, which was I was severe asthmatic, severe food allergies. So lots of shame, lots of guilt, lots of like feeling separate, lots of feeling broken, lots of like, I've been in the hospital for 3 weeks out of the year with the asthma attack. Like there was other things happening in my life that were the equivalent of an abusive thing, a different kind of trauma, but the same thing that caused me to have this social anxiety, carry this shame around. And so I was forced to just really, really look beyond what I thought was the problem. And then once I got sober, once I was like deep in it, 7 years in, I got my heart broken, like the worst I've ever, it was terrible. And it again forced me to like say like, okay, so it started because I got 6 or 5 years in, I went through another round of depression and I'm like, what the fuck? Like I stopped drinking, like I should be good to go here. And I wasn't. And so this moment again forced me to say like, okay, like what's deeper? And so all these little like moments that showed up in my life were saying, okay, you think this is a problem, but what you don't know about this is this. And that's when the real growth happens, when I was able to look beyond what I thought, what I was aware of, and get into what I didn't know about what I was aware of.
That's interesting because a lot of times I think we make assumptions that stopping the bad stuff creates good stuff. And obviously it's better than doing the bad thing, but it's not on its own always transformative, maybe.
Yep.
I mean, that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah. And you're right. Like, okay, so I removed the drugs and alcohol. That's big start, huge start.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Check.
good job. Like
Yeah,
that's
we
good.
needed
Now we
that
cleared
box
that
check.
away. Yeah.
That's actually like the very least thing you need to do, right?
Yeah.
That's what people don't realize. That's just what you need to get to, like, okay, I'm at baseline now.
Yeah.
We can start some real work.
Yeah. That's the starting line, not the finish line.
Yeah.
And
that was my same experience. I mean, when I met you, Sam, I think I was 2 years clean, sober, right? And I wasn't in a depression. I think I had waves of depression and an experience, obviously, with addiction, but like there was still something void, right? Where I'm doing the things I'm supposed to be doing. I'm living healthy. I'm living right. But and I don't know if it was something missing or a yearning for more, right? I don't know if it was a void or more of just a curiosity and seeing other people's experiences and knowing, okay, there's more. And especially with the plant medicines and addiction, there's tons of research on it. Like, it's no secret.
Yeah.
So I can relate with that. I mean, I too went through AA, and I was sitting in those rooms just like what you said, where I'm like, I can't relate with that. Like, I feel for it. I'm empathetic, but that's not me. And then and I think we have this weird middle ground with a lot of the traditional way we treat alcoholism addiction. It's outdated. I think, you know, I think we have a lot of guys like you and me that didn't have a huge family history, didn't come from abuse, had a relatively good life. I had asthma too. And I know for a fact, I didn't think of it till you just said this. For years, for sure, running, athletics, there was a little part in the back of my mind of fear of, well, what if I have an asthma attack? Do I have my inhaler? Am I performing as good?
Yep.
It's crazy how far back it really goes.
Totally, man.
Yeah. And I think for people listening, and even for me a little bit, like the click there was like, if you have, or, you know, friend, relative, whatever, going through this, you think that the box is like, that box is checked and like, oh, they're good. They stopped it, you know, but it's like, no, are they doing the next thing that's really unlocking whatever the issue was that caused it, or fulfilling whatever void that's now left? Because I would think that's, again, I've had my own demons, but I feel like it's a void or something. I think because that was filling something, right?
Yeah. For me, I mean, the alcohol I was a high level tennis player all through college, and then tried the pro tour after college. And when I stopped playing tennis, there was a massive void. And that was filled with, parties, cool, like social life, chasing girls, drinking beer, like awesome. That lasted for another 15 years. And then again, like you're right, there's a void there. And if you don't, that's you know, the opportunity or the invitation there is like, okay, I can fill this with something else that feels good, or I can fill it with like a life that I'm actually proud I'm living. And that's the biggest thing with like the addiction recovery is like, how can I get a year out and be fucking happy with my life and not still fucking miserable? Because if you're still miserable a year out, you're going to really question what's going on. Yeah. But if you're a year out and you're like, holy crap, I'm making more money, my relationships are better, I feel good, my body feels good, you're going to have a solid bedrock to jump off from.
Yeah. So how did you bottle all that up? So you got to the other side, and, you know, what started sort of your, you know, coaching and leadership journey?
You know, that started kind of with addiction. Like when I coming out of all the rehabs and all that stuff, there's not much between like a life and a rehab setting. You know, there's not much support there. And it's like, oh, I'm all good when I'm in treatment. Like, cool. Like I can be the rehab rock star and like spout all the spiritual knowledge and all that. I get back to my life and it's like, I still got to get up at 8 a.m. and go to work. And it's like, how am I going to do this? Yeah. And so there's like, I just recognized that there wasn't a lot of support there. And so I started working with guys in that kind of in between, you know, maybe like they're 90 days sober and they're like, they've changed a lot, but their life is still, and they just can't connect the dots. And so, that rolled into then realizing that a lot of the problem was how these men relate to people, because, you know, with addiction, it's a checkout. You're checking out, which is pretty much the opposite of leadership. And as men in the world, like it is part of our role, our DNA essentially, to be a leader. Like we create cultures wherever we go. Whether you guys create a culture on this podcast, like you create a culture in the vacay business, in relationships, we create the culture. And the thing is that how do we invite people into it? How do we become an inviting presence that people feel safe around, that people that can trust, that people can lean on? And so that was a big thing I noticed, was that these men all struggled with this, and it was rooted in shame and feeling like not enough. And so, and then when I recognized that, I was like, well, like I can zoom out from this, and it doesn't have to be post addiction. Like, this is really an all men thing. And so that's about 2017 is when I kind of like, I pulled away from like just the addiction thing and made it a bigger thing of just working with men on, self-leadership for one, but how do they lead the world that they want to hold? So that's business, that's finance, that's adventure, that's the feminine and whatever it is that's in front of them. How do they lead that and hold it all without collapsing underneath the weight of it?
You mentioned guiding men to explore and transcend their edges.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on kind of what those edges are?
Yeah. Edges are an edge is that moment when you feel like you want to jump out of your skin, whether that's like in intimacy, whether that's in a conflict, whether that's in a work dealing. There's these kind of like guardrails that we have on our life that are our edges. And when we meet up against one of those edges, that's what some people will call a trigger. It's there's a great book called The Big Leap where he talks about upper limit problems. So that's an edge. Like, oh my God, my life is fucking great. And he uses an example in the book. There was a guy, he was a multimillionaire, but he won the lottery. And he was like now a 9-figure net worth guy. And he ended up in jail with like drug charges, and like his family was suing him because he hit a limit where he was like just sabotaging it. So these edges are these things that we can bump up against, and it's uncomfortable. And it's like, holy crap, I don't know if I can do this. The self-doubt comes in, and a lot of men will recoil from that edge and go back to it like a smaller existence, a smaller lane. Now, if you can just stay at that edge for just a little bit longer, what happens is you don't move. You stay there, something's got to move. And if you stay long enough, the edge will move. And now you're expanding your capacity. You're expanding your range to be able to show up to your life in a bigger way where less will, quote unquote, affect you.
I almost think of that, and tell me if I'm right, talking with Sam Gibbs Morris. Sam, I think of that as like creating more headroom.
Yeah.
Like in a way, like, okay, you're bumping head, I've gone, or my capacity, but are we sort of in the same territory?
Exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you feel like your world is collapsing on you and you're constricted in like, the claustrophobia almost, you're going to have a different experience than if you feel like you can look around and breathe and be. Your awareness is the biggest thing. So as a masculine, our conscious awareness is what allows people to feel safe around us and allows us to be in a place where we can observe without reacting to a situation. If like you said, headroom, if we're feeling constricted around our head or around our body, it's going to be a very constricted experience, and we're going to be very reactionary, which is untrustworthy.
Yeah. I wonder, it's almost probably like you're not even self-aware that you're bumping your head. Like, like you are, but like, hey, I'm in this box, I'm hitting my head, but I don't even know it, but I don't even realize how limited I am.
Yep. Yeah. There's a great quote by Carl Jung, and it says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will run your life and you will call it fate.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, I'm just not meant to do that. I'm just not meant to be a millionaire. I'm just not meant to have an amazing relationship.
I love that. I've never heard that. Say that one more time, Sam.
Carl Jung quote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will run your life and you will call it fate.
Yeah. We've had so many people talk about conscious living, right? Living in alignment, consciously envision it, manifesting, right? Essentially, it's like live with intention and conscious and focus. And then it's funny when you do that, magic happens, right? It's like all of a sudden it appears in your reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I don't really like the word woke, but it's definitely, but you need to be awake.
Yeah.
And
you need to be friends with those two words.
Yeah, totally.
Chris is the only woke one here.
You know me.
He's the furthest
Chris in Miami, bro.
Yeah, I know. He's the first thing he's definitely not woke, but he is awake. We all are. That's what we're doing here on Vibe Science. Get awake with Sam Gibbs Morris.
Wake the fuck up.
Wake the fuck up. Yeah, no kidding. I know you use a lot of modalities
Yeah.
One I like and believe, and I don't even know it all. I just had a buddy that was big into it, was NLP. The theater of the mind, so to speak. What you're telling, I mean, that's kind of where I go, but talk to me about some of your modalities and specifically NLP.
Yeah. NLP. I mean, the way we speak is so important, and the more aware we become of how we speak, it's amazing the way that we limit ourselves with our own language. There's like the word but is such a limiter, or the word just, like when you're reaching out, like sending an email, hey, I'm just emailing you. Like you're immediately taking the importance of whatever you're about to say next down to another level. And so as we look at all the ways that we limit ourselves, like so much negative self-talk is based in just using language that defeats us. It's so convoluted because it gets wrapped up in being humble or self-deprecating and like, okay, great. But one of the reasons that I left AA was because of an NLP thing, because of the language used in the program. It was just like every morning you sit down and you're like, I'm Sam, I'm an alcoholic. I'm fucking tired of being an alcoholic and I'm tired of saying it. And because on the other side of that means that every morning I say that, I'm telling myself there's something wrong with me still. Mm-hmm. There's something still broken inside of me. And so when we can learn proper use of language, it literally changes our entire identity and our entire DNA.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it's like you have to live in fucking purgatory forever. Like, and I get it. I know why they do it. And it obviously works. And who am I? I mean, it's a, tried and true program in some ways. And a lot of people have benefited from it. So who am I to judge the program? I'm more just thinking about, the way we allow others maybe to talk about us, and then our own self-talk. Like you get forced into this place where you can never outrun your demons.
Yeah. I mean, and like you said, like AA for 6 years, it was everything that I needed. And then it was not, and then it stopped. And now we can zoom out on that. Like, oh, I'm like, you meet someone like, and they're like, they forget your name. Oh, I'm terrible with names. Like you keep saying that, you're going to be, as long as you keep saying that, you're going to continue to be that. Or I'm really bad at nutrition. Like, great. Continue telling yourself that. Right. It filters in through every area of our life.
I'm depressed.
I'm depressed.
Use that casually all the time now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I'm anxious. I have anxiety. Like, do you
yeah.
really? Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like I have anxiety. Like one of the shifts that I've made is that, whenever I feel like that coming on, like right now I'm experiencing anxiety. Like you say, I have anxiety, you're possessing anxiety, or I have autoimmune disorder, whatever it may be. If you can shift that from I have to I am experiencing, it tells your body that it's only an experience you're having. It's not permanent.
I want to touch on the AA thing because this is kind of controversial, right? Especially when you get into the plant medicines.
Yeah.
I got introduced to AA when I was 18 and probably went on and off till I was like 25, right? Like you said, for parts of my sobriety, it was really important for me. It was a good foundation, met great people. But of course, the more I went on my journey, like you said, the language that I was telling someone this literally 2 days ago, to say I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic, we're different from other people. It's constant separation. And what's interesting, and I want to know your experience with this, after doing plant medicines, after being in AA, because I know some people that definitely look at me like, oh, well, you're not sober. You're, you're living wrong, but look, history lesson for everybody. The two men that started AA, Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson, W. Yeah. Bill Wilson. Yeah. I believe it was Bill Wilson was actually treated with LSD at the VA hospital in California.
That's the belladonna treatment.
And then they formed the AA program, which, to be fair, the basis of it is really to find a connection with a higher power, right? Whatever that is. They nailed that part. But that's what I think is intriguing. There's a lot of controversy in the recovery, getting sober with this new emerging use of the plant medicines. When really, if you look at the founders, clearly I would assume if you did LSD, and it sounds like you had this spiritual experience, what was your experience with that? Did you have a lot of people kind of shun you from that community when you changed directions?
Yeah, I wouldn't go so far as to shun. I mean, I'm definitely aware of that experience. I've heard a lot of people talk about it. I
haven't been shunned either, by the way. Just
I definitely
self-shunning.
Yeah.
Some questions have been arisen for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I get asked all the time, do you consider yourself sober still? And I'm like, I think and this is like at the risk of not being very humble, is that I don't even feel like that's a thing for me anymore.
I was just going to say that too.
Like people like, oh, like I got sober. Like, are you sober? And I'm like, I guess like, but let's not even have that conversation. Like I'm okay by AA standards, like full abstinence, probably not. But again, like I don't even have, it's not even a conversation for me anymore about like addiction or sobriety or in recovery. Like it's just not part of my field anymore.
Yeah.
And one thing I know is that if we're going to put a like lens on it, I'm further away from that behavior than I've ever fucking been. And that happened the moment I left AA and started looking at other things.
Yeah. Like
there was an upward trajectory for 6 years, and then I left and started doing plant medicine, and it was like straight like hockey stick moment.
Yeah.
How actively are you using plant medicine?
I microdose pretty regularly.
Yeah.
I'll do it like, I'll do like a 2 month run with it and then take a month off. Like that's just give myself that space from it. As far as like big ceremonial sits, probably 2 to 3 times a year. I'll do either like big mushroom journey. Ayahuasca is about a once a year thing. Bufo maybe twice a year. So 3 to 4 times a year. It's like, I'm really open to the call of it. Like I know I'm familiar enough with it, and I have enough experience with it that I'll know like it's time, like the message comes in, like it's time to sit again. I'm right now I'm hearing both, like I'm going to ayahuasca again, probably January, February. It's been about 1.5 years since I've done it. And it's one of those deals where it's like, it keeps showing up. I've been on 2 podcasts with people that have ayahuasca centers, and they're like, yeah, come down, free week. Like, let's go. I'm like, all right. So ayahuasca, it's clearly like saying, get over here. It's time again. So here's my thing on plant medicine is I fucking love it. And I think it's probably one of the most important things that we have access to on any healing journey. Whether it's addiction. Chris, when we were in Costa Rica, I had just been diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
And sat with ayahuasca 3 times and went back and got a biopsy 3 weeks later, and the cancer was gone.
Yeah.
And so like whatever it is that we're looking for, these medicines are fucking intelligent and powerful. And there is so much importance to doing the work in a human, like conscious, like grounded setting. That's why I think AA was so important for me, is that I got to do 6.5 years of deep fucking work on myself without anything else.
Yeah.
Just me.
I agree.
And so I think what gets lost in the plant medicine journey is that people just do too much of it. They don't spend enough time in between, and they're just hopping. They're like, I'll do bufo and then ayahuasca, and they'll like, some people sit with ayahuasca like once a month, and I'm like, what? I don't.
That's important that you talk about that, because it's like anything else where the more people learn about it, you do have these people that are overusing it unintentionally. And I get asked that a lot. When I've told people I've never done psychedelics except in a very intentional setting. I've never been to like a festival or hanging out with my boys. It's always been, planned for.
Yep.
You diet before, you're journaling, you're really, it's a very important experience. And I think that's important that you're touching on that, is there needs to be a respect when it comes to this. Yeah.
And I think that's what, going back to the AA and plant medicine conversation, like that was an internal conversation I had about like, okay, am I going to go sit with ayahuasca and then, be calling up and like asking am I going to end up in jail a week later? And like one of the first plant medicine ceremonies I ever did post AA was a San Pedro ceremony, Wachuma. And I thought I had my addict licked. Like I was like, I'm good there. And that motherfucker came roaring back in that ceremony. Like, no. Tomorrow morning, I was in Sedona. We're going to be in the Sedona jail, make the call, get the cocaine. Like I was forced with, because what had really happened was that I had exiled that part of me. I just said, no, it doesn't exist anymore. And so in that plant medicine ceremony, it was just like, you got to be willing to see whatever it is. And I think going forward, like I've never had a plant medicine ceremony where the next morning I'm like, can we get more of that? Like it's always been, pretty complete feeling.
Yeah.
And I think what you speak to, Chris, is that the intentionality behind it is the most important thing. When you're so intentional about why we're here and we're not just doing it to get weird, it becomes a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything in moderation, including moderation.
Yeah.
That's what I like to say. That's what I'm drinking. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding.
Not
We gotta be real here. But it also, so when you're working with men, what's the most common refrain or challenge that you're seeing today? Like with them, you mentioned earlier the chopped off the knees thing. I think it's spot on. But
Yeah.
what are like some common problem solutions you're providing?
Yeah, common problems. There's a collective masculine wound of I am not enough, which is it butts up really well against the collective feminine wound, which is I am too much. So the feminine comes in and they're like, that's emotional and expressed and sensual and all this stuff. And a lot of men have been like, calm down, like even up down to like the father, the brother, the level is like, you're going to like, it's a safety thing really. But like the dad, for example, doesn't want the daughter to be fully expressed because he feels it's unsafe for her. But what she learns is that, okay, it's not okay for me to be expressed. And then you get in a relationship with men that don't have the capacity to hold it. It's, you're being too much, and then it turns into rejection. So what that looks like for men is that men have this thing, of not being enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not sexy enough. I don't last long enough in bed. I'm not strong enough. Like you put any label on it you want. It's a not enough thing. And so a lot of, when women begin to fully express themselves, men will get overwhelmed and the not enough wound will be activated. And so a lot of men, when they come to me, they just feel like that they're shame underneath the not enough wound is shame. I carry shame. So I carry shame that I can't hold this woman or I can't meet this woman or I can't, she feels rejected. And so I'm going to internalize this because I'm ashamed of who I am. And so the shame and the I am not enough wound is what runs a lot of the programming that how men show up. And so, really, really the way to do that is to build trust and to build capacity in your body. So that's nervous system regulation. That's breath work. That's being able to, like, one of the things I work with on is staying power. How well can we stay in something? How well can we, so our woman wants to be fully expressed and fully intimate and all these things. And as men, like we might be like, this is fucking thing. I'm about to jump out of my skin. Or like she'll bring something up, like I'm feeling a certain type of way. And the guy's like, but like the thing is though, when we can be in that moment with her and hold that with her, that increases our capacity and it rewrites both of those wounds of I'm not enough and I'm too much. It rewrites both of those things in our DNA and we now can be in those moments. And so, the work is to be done, with brothers in men's groups and also get into the dojo and do the reps in the relationship. But the major wound is I am not enough, fueled by shame. And the solution is cultivate staying power in your body. How well can I stay in a moment just a little bit longer and allow the presence to be there?
Is it on some level, is it like pain tolerance, like almost like, or, like staying uncomfortable?
Yeah. It's like, an ice bath or like do one more rep in the gym, like whatever it is, it is a bit of a pain. Like that's one way, that we can reprogram our body to stay in something a little bit longer. So yeah, definitely pain tolerance.
And I
the
think
best way to stay is breathe.
Yeah.
Learn to fucking breathe. Fuck. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're being conditioned to everything to be comfortable and even, equal and convenient. And and some of that's good, but when everything's comfortable and everything's fair and all that, it doesn't push us to grow as much. And that's what we're talking about, growth, right?
Yeah.
And I really love the talk to yourself. It's like, hey, I'm Ryan. I'm trying to be the best version of myself every day right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like that's how we should talk to, and when you feel like you are, say, I'm the best version of myself that I've ever been.
Yep.
Rather than I'm a alcoholic or I'm a, an addict or I'm, an idiot or whatever. I mean, I think there's a lot to learn from those lessons. Sam, as we're closing out here, can you share the most transformative moment you've had with a client? maybe not naming names, but like how, like just someone that's gone from this place to that place, that will just blow your mind, or even, like a proud moment? Yeah.
Current client, he's actually going through a divorce, and he's, he was already pretty conscious. Like he was, and then he met this woman and things got real ugly. And, he then picked up a lot of false information. And so it's amazing, like within weeks of working together, like coming back into truth, like when there's so much information incoming, especially from the men, like we want approval and we want to be liked, and we want like this woman in front of us that we love, like love me back. And so what happens in a lot of the not enough thing is like, there's a lot of people pleasing, and there's a lot of like, okay, yeah, you must be right. And so, this one client I'm thinking of, it was amazing the recalibration that he had from like just removing himself from the relationship and all the negative talk and all the, the whatever it was that she, and this is not like she's a bad person. It's just she was a very wounded person that was asking for a lot from him. And then when he wasn't able to do it, it turned into a lot of shaming, a lot of guilt, a lot of not enoughness. And so, and this is one example, but it really is in these moments when he closed off essentially. And so in these moments, that what it is how well can we open back up to love and to truth? And so this guy, he had a little bit of a basis, but coming back into what he knows to be true about himself without the taking away all the external feedback, and just for a little bit, go into monk mode, whatever you want to call it. He comes back into center, and now has, his stature's better, his color's better, like everything about the way he shows up and speaks is stronger because he's now called all that energy that he was giving away back to himself.
Interesting. There's the old saying, hurt people hurt people. Sounds like that. That's what he was dealing with from her, maybe. Yeah. Unfortunately.
And it's so easy. I mean, he's a younger guy, and it's easy to like, oh, yeah, she must be right. Like it's really easy to be taken away by that. And so it's so important for us to lock into what is true for us. And then and that's why embodiment is so important, body set over mindset. Because in the mind, like the things come in, we can obsess about it, be like, oh yeah, I can see how she's right there. But check in with your body. Like, is that truth to you? Do you feel like you collapse in that, or do you open up in that?
Sam, I feel like we could talk for a couple hours, but I want to keep you rolling here. Maybe we'll do a part 2 down the road if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Talk about some of the other modalities and maybe health and fitness and those kind of things. But where can everybody learn more about what you're doing, everything you got going on, and how they might work with you?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, guys. First of all, Chris, great to see you again. Ryan, great to meet you. Thank you so much for having me here. The best place to go is Instagram. It's at Sam Gibbs Morris. That's GIBBS, Sam Gibbs Morris. Everything kind of shoots off from there.
Sweet. Go give him a follow. If nothing else, you can watch his journey and what he's doing with other men and how he's leading and taking others to their highest vibe. That's what we love. Sam, we really appreciate you, brother, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Hey, guys, you know where to find us, vibescience.media. We'll have all the clips. We'll have links to the full podcast across all the networks and our social media channels. For Chris Broby Hansen on Instagram, I'm Ryan Alford. We'll see you next time on Vibe Science. The content discussed on this show is provided for reference and educational purposes. The content is not an attempt to practice medicine or provide specific medical advice. Always consult your personal physician for medical advice and proper diagnosis.
Thanks for listening. This is Vibe Science. To learn more or watch full episodes, visit vibesciencepodcast.com. Here's to discovering your highest vibe.